The original owner set out to find the Valeria Manor for one purpose, to locate the ancient altar and through sacrifice, obtain the S-level extraordinary talent. In a way, Simon completed the original owner's last wish. However, there's a slight difference: Simon has awakened double talents. Without a point of reference, Simon doesn't know whether this is good or bad, or if this is a normal situation. The ability of the all-seeing eye is somewhat clear to him, but the function of the Death Harvester is a mystery. The information left on the retina doesn't provide much more than that. The only useful thing might be the map. At least, he knows where the original owner came from and can trace back the path to find the origin. Simon plans to leave this place and head to a human gathering point to understand this world. He carefully examined the basement and found nothing extra. The 5 stone statues all have spiderweb-like cracks, which spread to the altar. It looks like this ancient altar has completely lost its function. Simon didn't stay long and left the secret passage. Back in the dilapidated Valeria Manor, Simon was panting. The massive blood loss made him feel dizzy. Everything he had was taken by Bald Ivan and his men before his journey. He urgently needs to find some food to fill his stomach and replenish his energy. Otherwise, he knows he won't get far. I don't know what kind of existence Penelope is, or where that special space is. Simon looked at the dilapidated Valeria Manor and felt like he was dreaming. According to Marcus, Bald Ivan and his men all died in the manor, so there should be bodies. But Simon looked around and didn't see any bodies. The cobwebs on the passage suggest that no one had been there except him. Simon found nothing in the house and left. Walking into the yard, he noticed the sky was gray, like a black night covered by dark clouds. The manor seems to be built on a mountainside. The enhanced vision allows Simon to vaguely see some large buildings in the distance. It looks like a dilapidated ghost city with no light source and enveloped in fog. There are also vague shadows of moving large creatures in the fog. Seeing this, Simon's eyes deepened, and he muttered to himself, the mysteries of this world are becoming more and more intriguing. Just like discovering an undiscovered map in a game, the intense desire to explore stirred his heart. This is one of his beliefs to stay alive. However, if a dilapidated manor is so strange and dangerous, the dilapidated buildings in the distance must be fraught with danger. Simon didn't plan to explore the city ruins right away. He carefully checked the map on his retina and planned to find the route where the original owner came from and return the same way. The map is strange, the route is from top to bottom. Which means, if the scale on the route is correct, Simon is at least hundreds of kilometers deep underground. Who would build such a large city in such a deep cave? This is very strange. Moreover, if this is underground, what's the deal with the faint light source above? This cave space is too big. However, Simon, who has experienced extraordinary power, didn't delve into these issues. No matter how strange this world is, it's within his expectations. Simon checked the direction and planned to leave the Valeria Manor. But just a few steps out, he saw a bloody man lying in the ruined garden of the manor. The shiny bald head immediately put Simon on alert. Clearly, this guy used to be the gang leader, Bald Ivan. At this moment, he had shed his metal scales, with wounds opening up all over his body, as though he had been tortured. Is he still alive? Simon looked at Bald Ivan's slightly rising and falling chest, a bit taken aback, considering Penelope's abilities. Killing this guy should have been a piece of cake. Did she intentionally leave him for me as a gift? Or did this bald guy have a trick up his sleeve to escape from that special space? Pondering for a moment, Simon chose not to flee but opened the wooden box to take out the rune puppet. Then, he slowly approached Bald Ivan. Perfect, he was in desperate need of survival supplies, and this bald guy had come just in time. 20 meters, 10 meters, reaching within 10 meters, Simon breathed a sigh of relief. Even if Bald Ivan still had the strength to resist at this point, the rune puppet should be able to control him. Apparently, Simon's caution was unnecessary, as Bald Ivan had completely passed out there facing the guy who had almost killed him before. Simon showed no mercy, pulling out the dagger from his waist and stabbing it into his chest. The sharp dagger punctured accurately beneath the rib, instantly ending Bald Ivan's life. Only when Bald Ivan stopped breathing did Simon breathe a sigh of relief. At this moment, something strange happened. Simon's eyes widened as he saw a gray, glowing mist emerging from Bald Ivan's corpse. He thought it might be some sort of corpse transformation or spirit conversion, but before he could think further, he found himself overcome by an urgent desire to consume that gray mist. It was the kind of craving you have when you're starving and see food. Could this be a soul? Simon suppressed that craving and suddenly realized something before he tentatively reached out to touch the gray mist. In the next instant, a series of images and information surged into his mind. Acquired Bald Ivan's memory fragments. You have mastered some basic mechanical knowledge. You have captured a piece of information. Oh. Marcus's apple wine is really good. Combat experience +5 and mental power +0.1. This gray mist is actually Bald Ivan's memory fragments. Simon found that there was some additional knowledge in his mind that he saw Bald Ivan maintaining and modifying a mechanical arm, and Bald Ivan in combat with others. However, after the light group was consumed and integrated by him, there was no barrier. Those memory fragments felt like his own, first-hand experience. As for the spicy image that made its way into his mind, it was naturally ignored compared to the other surprises. Coming back to his senses, Simon realized that he seemed to have acquired some of Bald Ivan's skills. That he looked at his own panel again. Sure enough, his mental power had also increased by 0.1, and there was a new entry in the skill column, Basic Mechanics entry level. The +5 increase in combat experience was so significant that Simon estimated it might take him several months of hard training to achieve the same level of improvement. Then it dawned on him, understanding the clever use of this S-level talent ability. The ability of this S004 Death Harvester is to strip memory fragments from the soul and then use them for my own. Realizing the potential of this ability, he was somewhat incredulous. Is this ability so against the heavens? While this talent ability doesn't directly increase combat power, it is definitely a god-tier ability for growth and development. It can strip memories from the deceased, thus gaining a portion of the target's abilities. No wonder it's called Death Harvester. The more Simon thought about it, the more impressed he was. This meant that as long as he had enough memory fragments, he could easily master more skills and abilities: magic, alchemy, mechanical knowledge, combat experience, archery, etc. Skills that others need to spend a lot of time and experience to learn, he could master instantly. The potential for the future was infinite, truly worthy of being an S-class super talent. Without thinking further, Simon realized another problem. When Bald Ivan was still alive, there was no gray mist on his body. It only appeared after he was killed, which meant that the ability of this Death Harvester seemed to only strip the souls of the deceased. But where to find so many souls to harvest? Thinking of this, Simon raised his eyebrows slightly. The next moment, he muttered something as if he was having a conversation with someone. Hey, don't get too excited. At this point, he hadn't realized that he had entered a brutal world where human life was as insignificant as ants. In this place, death was as constant as the wind, accompanying everyone. Baldric was already dead, and Simon began to collect his spoils of war. The magical metal arm that was attached to the right side of the guy was now terribly damaged from the previous battle. The magic cannon, the magic valve, and the high-pressure magic pipelines were all cut open. However, this did not stop Simon from researching this field of magical mechanics. He had just stripped Baldric of his memory and gained some basic knowledge of magical machinery. Looking at the design of this magical metal arm, he could roughly understand its architecture. The magic tree of this world seems to have deviated, a combination product of alchemy and magical drive. Simon glanced at the runes carved on the magical metal arm and fell into thought. The simple metal material could not support such a complex structure, especially the ultra-high-pressure magical cannon. These mysterious alchemical runes played a vital role in the stability of the structure. However, his knowledge in magical mechanics was still very limited and he couldn't understand the principles of these inscriptions and enchantments for now. Without a second glance, Simon began to scavenge the rest of Baldric's equipment. Unfortunately, apart from the short sword mentioned earlier, all the items on the body were nearly destroyed. Even the magical cannon was cut into several sections, with half of the handle still stuck in the holster. Simon was somewhat disappointed. He did not find the supplies he was looking for and wondered, is this it? Don't these guys bring food when they leave home? Just as he had this thought, he suddenly saw the 3 black gem magical rings that Baldric had been wearing. If Simon remembered correctly, one of them was stripped from the finger of the coxcomb head man who had died earlier. He looked closely, and the Eye of All-Seeing immediately responded with information. Damaged space magic ring, detailed explanation, inferior space magic equipment, engraved with identity recognition runes, damaged. Space magic equipment? Upon seeing this, Simon had a look of realization. In this abandoned underground city, water and food should be more important than weapons. These guys didn't even have a water bottle on them, which was not normal. He stripped off a storage magic ring and put it on his finger. The moment he thought of it, he suddenly saw that the black gem on the storage magic ring was a folding magic space. There was a small space of half a cubic meter, crammed full of various bottles and jars. They were colored red and green and arranged in rows, looking like magic potions. Simon casually pulled out a red magic potion and used the Eye of All-Seeing to appraise it. Inferior healing magic potion, oral, detailed explanation, rapid hemostasis and accelerated wound healing. Although it contains impurities, it has negligible side effects. Then he looked at a blue one, which was meant for the recovery of dark spirit power. Besides these, there were some high-level magic potions with inscriptions on the test tubes, but their quantity was very limited. Indeed, emergency medicines are essential items for adventurers. It seems I won't die now. Simon was delighted. One moment he was worried about the lack of necessary potions, thinking that the wounds on his body would become infected and inflamed, posing an unpredictable fatal threat. But upon seeing these potions, he instantly opened a medium-level healing magic potion and drank it. He also used the external disinfectant potion to clean his wounds. If he didn't have the eye of all-seeing, Simon thought, even if he had seen these potions, he wouldn't have known that these were life-saving potions in these test tubes. Of course, there was also poison. Now it seems that this innate ability is a perfect match for him as a transmigrator. What was amazing was that after Simon had taken the potion, he suddenly felt a tingling sensation in the wounds on his palms. He was well aware that it was the sensation of accelerated cell division and the healing of wound tissues. Under normal circumstances, this healing sensation wouldn't be apparent until a few days after the wound had formed. What a miraculous potion! If it was in the Middle Ages, this would be the life-saving elixir of surgery. Simon's sight now allowed him to see the wound on his hand healing at a rate visible to the naked eye. It looked like it would completely recover in less than half an hour. However, he also grumbled, using a medium-level potion for such injuries is a bit of a waste. It seemed that the potent effect of a medium-level healing potion should be used to treat more fatal injuries. The wounds on his palms could have been dealt with by an inferior potion. It seemed sufficient, but Simon did not feel bad about it. In the second magic storage ring, Simon found the food and water he wanted, but it looked very unappetizing. The food was as hard as a brick, black bread, and the water was murky. If he hadn't appraised it as inferior drinking water, Simon wouldn't have thought this murky liquid, which looked like it came directly from a swamp, could be drinking water. He didn't hurry to eat. In the last magic storage ring, Simon found weapons. There were 2 punk-style magic short cannons, and then a bunch of magic cannon shells and some replacement parts for the magic metal arm. The cannons were good cannons, and the shells were not all simple gunpowder shells. After appraising them, Simon found that among the ordinary shells, there were some special shells with rune-inscribed warheads, magic cannon shell, alchemy, high explosive, magic cannon shell, alchemy, armor-piercing, magic cannon shell, alchemy, magic breaker. The quantity wasn't much, but they all looked very formidable. With no other food left in the last magic storage ring, Simon had no choice. His low blood sugar was making him dizzy. He took a bite of the black bread and gulped down some water with a rotten taste. As he ate, he was puzzled. Judging from the equipment Baldric had on him, like the magical short cannon and the cannonballs, the industry of this world should be quite advanced. But the food was poor. Can't these people even ensure basic clean water and food? Simon, who had traveled here, found it hard to understand why they had such high-quality equipment yet lacked clean drinking water. Simon sat next to Baldric's body to eat. He observed as the physiological characteristics of the living gradually disappeared from the body, the skin turned pale, the body temperature slowly faded away. While still sorting through the items in the magic storage ring, he suddenly noticed 2 glowing objects appearing on Baldric's body. A blue scale the size of a palm slowly formed on the skin, the other was a dark red strip that looked like a muscle fiber. Upon identification, they were 2 special items. Magic scale armor, broken, and cursed item, magic muscle, damaged. Is this the scale armor that Baldric was impervious to? So it's some kind of equipment. Simon suddenly found it fascinating. What exactly was this kind of thing? It could become a tattoo on the body, be driven into physical form by a magic circle, and still peel off after death. The prevalence of magic alchemy in the eye of omniscience only made him more curious. After that, the magic muscle peeled off from the body, Baldric's corpse visibly shrank. Simon finally understood something. So the night ritual items are used like this, they're directly integrated into the body to enhance physical attributes? He immediately thought of the sorcerer's night ritual item he had, which could greatly enhance agility and skill after completing the night ritual. It seems that Baldric's magic muscle was the root cause of his exaggerated strength. Having barely filled his stomach, Simon had also almost finished sorting through the items in Baldric's storage ring. It's not that he didn't want to figure it all out, but that the Eye of Omniscience needed magic power to identify items. The higher the level of the items, the more magic power was consumed. Simon loaded 2 magic cannons with magic cannonballs. One with ordinary magic cannonballs, the other with special alchemy bullets, then fastened them at his waist. He planned to leave this place first, find a human city, and learn about this world. As he was about to leave, he looked at Baldric's body, looked at this deserted manor, and another question arose in Simon's mind. Why did Baldric kidnap the original host? Was he a hired assassin, or did a teammate suddenly harbor evil intentions? Simon guessed the former was more likely. Even if the original host was foolish, he probably wouldn't share such an important legacy of Baron Isaac with others. Plus, based on the information left by the Magic Eye, the original host was a sensitive figure, seemingly a noble descendant of a great family who had been exiled. Simon surmised, returning to the original host's city could lead to an assassination attempt. With this thought, his brows furrowed. This was not good news. It meant that even if he returned to the city where the original host came from, he couldn't reveal his identity. Otherwise, it might lead to murder. This is a bit troublesome. Simon mumbled, such a handsome face is too recognizable. A few days later, in the intricate system of subterranean tunnels, Simon found himself in a dimly lit pit, holding his breath as much as possible. His gaze was fixated several hundred meters away. There, a humanoid creature roamed aimlessly, hunting for its prey within the caverns. It was clad in remnants of human clothing and gear, but its form had morphed into a monstrous and bloated figure, similar to a colossal giant. Simon watched this creature closely, his finger poised on the trigger of his flintlock loaded with alchemical ammunition. Any closer and he would obliterate its skull with a single shot. Deformed humans, overview, these are monsters, transformed from humans unable to withstand the corruption of the curse. They possess acute auditory senses, yet they lack intelligence. Their only instincts are to hunt and kill. Fortunately, the creature soon wandered away in a different direction, not coming any closer to the pit where Simon was hiding. Simon breathed a sigh of relief, whispering to himself, just how many strange creatures lurk beneath the surface. This was not his first encounter with such a monster. He had faced one 3 days ago when he emerged from the tunnel, oblivious to the dangers of the caverns and the fact that even the slightest sound of a stepping stone could attract these creatures with their hypersensitive hearing. Thanks to his enhanced eye of all-seeing, Simon made a timely discovery. The creature charged at him like an avalanche of flesh, nearly taking his life right there and then. One couldn't afford to get too close to these deformed creatures, a single wound from them could splatter you with a face full of foul, corrosive rotten flesh. Regular bullets were of little use, they would simply sink into the creature, as ineffective as shooting into a pile of mud. It took several rounds of his explosive alchemical ammunition, detonating with the force of a grenade, to finally dismember the creature into pieces. But Simon's supply of alchemical ammunition was limited, and there was more than one type of creature lurking in these caves. If not for his awakened eye of all-seeing that tremendously improved his night vision, Simon would have been long dead, relying on a rudimentary alchemical night vision device. Simon initially thought the cavern world was just a large mine or cave. But the vastness of the underground space was staggering, filled not only with human ruins but also a complete ecosystem teeming with various animals, plants, and monsters lurking in every dark corner. Have you ever seen a forest of bioluminescent mushrooms standing tens of meters tall? Dinosaur-sized lizards? Swarms of red-eyed rats reminiscent of a locust plague? A centipede that's over 10 meters long with an actual 1,000 legs? Or a giant tentacle monster with eyes covering the entire wall? Simon certainly hadn't in his previous life. But in just a few days, he had accumulated a vast amount of knowledge about these bizarre creatures, thanks to the eye of all-seeing. These cave dwellers were grotesque and repulsive, as if they were creatures deformed by magical pollution. This environment was absolutely inhospitable to humans. Fearing that the creature might still be nearby, Simon decided to stay in the pit a bit longer, replenishing his food and water supplies. According to the map I found in Baldrick's storage ring, I should be nearing the Iron Tower area where human activity is more frequent. Hopefully, I can run into other wilderness hunters and get some information. Simon glanced at the marked map, checked his food and water reserves, and estimated that his supplies would probably not last until he reached the human settlement marked at the end of the map. Simon, always cautious and alone, didn't dare to carelessly hunt down the cryptic creatures, fearing that it would bring more trouble. These days, he gradually got a clear idea of this mysterious world with extraordinary power. The presence of a massive city ruin in the underground world suggested that thousands of years ago, a vast population lived here. Furthermore, Baldrick and his people weren't miners, but a team of adventurers known as wasteland hunters, who risked their lives in the caves to seek resources. Their pallid complexion was not solely due to their heritage but was the paleness from the prolonged absence of sunlight. Simon even suspected that his destination was not on the surface but underground. However, these were all speculations. If he could make it to his destination alive in a few days, he would probably find out the truth. Before long, the feeling of satiety from food gave Simon enough energy to continue. Then, he suddenly remembered something and took out the Penelope's brooch he had stored in Baldrick's storage ring. Simon had been contemplating what the unknown information displayed on the brooch was. He was constantly puzzled by the mystery of Penelope's death. A mansion abandoned for thousands of years, a ghost species, and a story with obvious doubts, they all felt like a puzzle missing a key piece. Having watched over 1,000 horror films and cleared numerous horror games, Simon had an intuition that there was something wrong with the brooch. There are many peculiar supernatural powers in this world, and you never know when it might spell big trouble. If he didn't know about it, the suspicion wouldn't matter. But since there were doubts, Simon didn't intend to keep this potential bomb with him. He was now far enough from the mansion not to worry about triggering anything unpleasant. Without much hesitation, Simon dug a hole in the rock pit, buried the brooch, and marked the spot. He thought that if there was no problem, he could dig it up again after his cognition could identify the hidden information. But he had no idea that not long after burying it, a wolf within the brooch woke up and murmured as if from the abyss, "Huh. Did that kid discover something?" Simon had no idea that a few days after he left Stormhold Manor, through the secret passage, a team of men in black quietly arrived. In the dilapidated manor, a blonde young man in a pink suit was leisurely drinking coffee. The ominous and dreadful atmosphere didn't seem to affect his mood. Before long, the blonde man's subordinate had forcefully broken into the cursed space, full of bizarre dolls. A burly man in a black suit holding a box came over and reported, "Lord Edwin, we found a ghost species in the cursed space of this manor, and we've taken it down." The burly man seemed quite experienced in dealing with such matters. He then opened the box to show the spoils of battle, and added, "This is the cursed object we found after killing it. It's probably the source of this cursed space. Master Nicholas has already identified it. This cursed object is of high quality and very useful." The blonde man glanced at the black butterfly brooch in the box. He wasn't particularly interested in the female accessory, and waved his hand. "Lady Teresa likes to collect these accessories. Send it to her mansion when we get back." The man in the suit respectfully replied, "Yes, sir." Just like Simon, this group also had the same treasure map. They soon found the underground passage and navigated through the maze to find the shattered altar. Lord Edwin was excited about the legendary relic of the Twilight Cross Society, the most mysterious and powerful alchemy organization of the last era, which had shocked the clan elders. If the altar really existed as the decoded content of the manuscript had indicated, then he might awaken a legendary super talent. But soon, he heard bad news. The security captain in a suit came over with a slightly grim expression and reported, "Sir, we've explored the basement. It does match the content deciphered in the Isaac's alchemical manuscript. But the ancient altar in the secret room has been destroyed. We can't perform any sacrificial rituals anymore." Moreover, Lord Edwin felt a bad premonition. "What's more?" The man in the suit said, "Moreover, after our careful investigation, we found recent human activity traces in the basement. So we deduced that someone might have triggered the altar." Upon hearing this, Lord Edwin exclaimed, "That's impossible. We're the only ones who knew about this." The large gap between having an invaluable treasure within his grasp and losing it made him furious. Damn it. It must be that old guy from the House of Reginald interfering. And what about the ruins of the ancient city of Eldoria? We've sent people to investigate, but no one came back alive. Our initial estimate is that the danger level is at least red. Meanwhile, after a few more days of traveling, Simon finally encountered a living person. "Lorne, congrats on your promotion, boy. Your Windwalker profession has a wide range of main alchemical implant materials. This time our main targets are the lightning lizard and the cavern hound. There are plenty of these two monsters in the shallow layers of the caverns. As long as we're not unlucky, the chance of obtaining curse materials is pretty high, yeah. If we happen to come across a Beast King, we may even extract silver quality curse materials. Then, we can have the guild's mechanic refine them for you, and you, Lorne, can become a professional. Guys, stop teasing me. I've almost spent all my savings on the necessary materials and blueprints for my promotion. If we don't get any gains this time, I'll be totally broke. Ha ha ha. Don't worry, Vice Captain Lorne. Once you become a professional, your combat power will skyrocket. The initial investment will soon pay off, and by then, we'll have to rely on you." This is a fully armed wilderness hunting team of 8 people. They chose to set up camp in the ruins of a ruined watchtower. And the location of this camp is also right on the map of Simon. While they were chatting, the team member on guard duty suddenly noticed some unusual movements in the depths of the cave and warned, "Watch out, folks, someone is coming." Moving through the gloomy cave was a slow process, and it would probably take 4 or 5 days for Simon to reach the city where the original master resided. But Simon's situation isn't too good. His food is almost exhausted, and if he doesn't get any supplies soon, he'll likely have to hunt some cave monsters for food. But as for water, that's a big problem. Simon originally thought that since there's an ecological chain underground, water should be plentiful. He found several water holes and seepages in the cave after many days of travel. But the all-seeing eye identified them as all various degrees of polluted water sources, which would cause mutations if consumed. Simon also vaguely understood why the water in the bald storage ring was so murky, but still drinkable. Compared to mutation, murkiness is acceptable. Simon originally wanted to run into some people to buy some drinking water and ask about the situation. But obviously, meeting anyone in such a desolate cave isn't a good choice for asking for directions or buying water. But now, he's run into this wilderness hunting team. Having seen the brutality of Bald and his men, Simon didn't think too highly of the people in this world, but he still had to take the risk and make contact with this team, because they've also spotted him. Obviously, there are also people among them who are good at long-range sensing. And they've aimed their guns at him long before Simon saw them. Simon's eyesight is amazing. When he saw that the sniper on the watchtower had aimed his rifle at him, he made no attempt to resist. He raised his hands to show that he wasn't reaching for any weapons, and on his waist, a wooden box hung there. Just a slight touch would cause the rune puppet inside to fall out. 8 people, 2 snipers, and 6 in the camp. Simon took a quick look and got a rough idea. The range of the rune puppet is only 10 meters, and the several hundred meters distance made him anxious, but if he chose to run, the snipers would probably take him out as if playing a game of whack-a-mole. As he walked, he shouted, "I mean no harm. I just want to exchange for some food and water. Boss, he's a human, not a weirdo. Yeah, seems like a poor lone wolf. Hey, is that red firearm on his waist the famous gun, three-headed ghost? Isn't that Ironhead Ivan of the Raven Gang's gun? I see. That Ironhead Ivan is a tough cookie to deal with." A small team camping in the ruins of a dilapidated watchtower was obviously curious about the lone man they encountered. They watched as the bald man approached without showing any signs of being a threat. Yes, the bald man was Simon. How to quickly change one's facial features without plastic surgery. Simon was worried his unforgettable handsome face would bring trouble from his past life. Returning to the city like this was absolutely not an option. Deliberately disfiguring his face with a knife was too conspicuous. Instead, Simon opted for a drastic physical disguise, shaving off his eyebrows. If anyone has tried it, they would know. If you want your face to suddenly become unfamiliar, the most direct way is to shave off your eyebrows. It's an incredibly effective method of disguise, and the effects are immediate. Moreover, Simon had no image to maintain. To be safe, he even shaved off his hair. Then he used oil paint to apply eyeshadow and create a smoky eye look. He went from a gentlemanly and handsome young man to a punk-styled wanderer. Given the outfits of the previously encountered bald men, this dark punk attire was not unusual in this world. In fact, it was mainstream. Several people in the wasteland hunting team that Simon encountered were dressed in this manner. Simon approached the crumbling clay city wall, at least 10 guns aimed at his head. Whether it was his lack of knowledge about steam-powered machinery, he felt that the equipment of the people before him, though not as refined as that of the bald men, was more complex and technologically advanced. They were equipped with various long guns and short cannons, odd-shaped mechanically driven short swords, mechanically driven shields, full-body metal skeleton armor for carrying loads, and backpack-sized steam-powered energy furnaces. What was even more astonishing was that the one who seemed to be the captain had 2 well-crafted steam-powered mechanical arms, not like the external skeleton mechanical arms of the bald men, but fake limbs that completely replaced flesh and blood arms. Did I guess wrong? Is this not a magical world, but a steampunk one? Seeing this, Simon began to doubt his previous speculation. Perhaps the technology tree of this world had deviated to the point where even highly advanced areas such as limb modification had been developed. Limited mechanical knowledge left him confused. How could this world, which seemed to be a mixture of steam technology and magic, be linked to high-tech prosthetics controlled by the nervous system? This was a strong technological clash, like people from the Steam era developing lightsaber technology from Star Wars. Theoretically, this kind of tech was several eras apart. However, the confusion passed in a flash. Simon's face didn't show any unusual reactions at this moment. The men on the wall were also cautious, shouting, "Halt." Simon obediently stopped. The mechanical-armed captain asked, "Who are you?" In response to the inquiry, Simon gave his pre-prepared response, "I'm a wilderness hunter. My team and I got separated when we encountered a flock of lightning lizards. I'm short on food and water right now. If you're willing, I'd like to buy some, or maybe even trade for some." Because of his lack of understanding of this world, he tried to be as vague as possible. This half-truth wasn't entirely made up. He had indeed run into a group of giant lizards before. Surprisingly, it seemed like the people in front of him were on a hunt for these speedy creatures that resembled cheetahs. Upon hearing Simon's words, their faces lit up with anticipation. Sure enough, someone directly asked, "You encountered a lightning lizard flock?" "Yes," Simon responded, pointing down the corridor. "On the left-hand side of this passage, towards the Bergamo region, there's a large group of them. I reckon that's their nest." The joy on their faces deepened upon hearing his precise answer. The leader of the group, a man with an iron prosthetic, quickly glanced at the flame crossbow on Simon's waist and asked, "You're alone? Which hunting group are you from?" Without thinking, Simon casually replied, "I'm from the Green Hat Hunter group." "Oh?" The leader's eyes narrowed and darted towards the black magic storage bag in Simon's hand. "Are you from the Black Crow Thieves?" At his words, the group's expressions subtly changed. Simon, sensing the shift in their attitude, was on high alert. He didn't understand the precise meaning of Black Crow Thieves, but he had a feeling that they were onto something. Clearly, there was a problem. Simon suspected it had to do with his flame crossbow. Compared to the weapons held by the group, his crossbow was far superior. However, admitting to being a member of the Black Crow Thieves could potentially lead to his immediate demise. Simon knew he had to be vague to avoid trouble. "As you can see, I'm an independent adventurer. I apologize for the misunderstanding. I'm just here to buy some food and water. If you don't have any to spare, then forget it." An independent adventurer? The leader, finding Simon's lack of affiliation intriguing, appeared to be toying with him. Seeing Simon's apprehension, he suddenly softened his demeanor and signaled for his group to lower their crossbows. No, what I meant was, if you're not with any group, you could consider joining us. We're from the Iron Hammer Brotherhood. You can call me Derek. As soon as Derek finished speaking, someone added, this is our leader, the renowned Iron Arm Derek from the Eastern Longstreet. Catching a glimpse of Derek's iron prosthetic, Simon politely responded, of course, I've heard of your reputation, Derek. Flattery always works, whether you know the person or not. Based on their conversation, Simon deduced that the Iron Hammer Brotherhood was a significant organization and that Derek was a prominent figure in it. Derek, seemingly satisfied with Simon's response, invited, brother, would you like to rest in our camp for a bit? We can sell you some food and water. That's very kind of you. Although he was no longer in immediate danger, Simon felt he had no choice but to accept the invitation. As he entered the camp where a bonfire was burning, Simon had no intention of staying long or engaging in unnecessary conversations. However, it was apparent that they were still trying to figure him out. What do we call you, brother? You can call me Simon. So, you're not a professional yet? No, I'm not. Oh, you should consider joining us, the Steam Union. Once you're with us, you'll have many options for the Knight tokens and magic prosthetic blueprints you'll need. You know, apart from the Cross Knights and Black Crow Thieves, no one else in the Longstreet district can provide more resources than us. And if you want to modify your magic prosthetics, we, the Steam Union, are the best. I'll think about it. Simon was gleaning quite a lot of useful information from their chatter. It seemed there was a distinction between the Castle District and the Longstreet District within the city, and there were three major factions in the Longstreet District. Seeing Simon's non-committal response, Captain Derek brought up the purpose of their expedition. We've come out this time to gather cursed materials needed for our Vice Captain Lauren's magic prosthetic, he hinted. Our target is the lightning lizard's tendons or the cavehound's skin. If you happen to have these materials, we're willing to buy them. I'm sorry, but we don't. Our group was scattered by danger not long after we set out, so we don't have much to show for our efforts. The atmosphere of the conversation remained fairly pleasant. The others provided Simon with 3 days' worth of drinking water and food. Simon hadn't originally intended to think badly of people, but their next move left him with no choice but to act. His water bottle, handed to him by them, was identified by the all-seeing eye as containing a neuroparalytic potion. Their intention was pretty clear. They probably hadn't acted earlier because they weren't certain whether Simon, being alone, had any hidden cards or unknown power. Now that they had a sense of his abilities, it was time for them to act. Poisoning the water was their best option. If he drank it, it would all be over. Even if he didn't drink, with their numbers, it wouldn't be too late for them to attack. Now that Simon knew they were up to no good, his expression became subtly hostile when he looked at them. It looked as if they were simply sitting around the fire, chatting, but it was more like they were encircling him and their shifting gazes were fixed on his flame crossbow. They were ready to strike at the first sign of any unusual movement from him. Simon feigned ignorance and unscrewed the water bottle. He had no intention of reaching for his crossbow. He was very clear that no matter how quickly he could draw the crossbow, he could only fire 1 or 2 shots at most. There were 8 of them, and then there was the most threatening professional among them, Derek, the iron arm fighter. But the good news was, besides the 2 on lookout, the other 6 were within 10 meters of Simon, and this distance was within the range of the cursed artifact, rune puppet. Simon, with a sincere smile on his face, pretended to drink the water, but just as he was about to lift the bottle to his lips, he stopped as if he suddenly remembered something, and smiled. Captain Derek, thanks for your hospitality. Although there were some dangers on this trip, we did gain something. As he spoke, Simon calmly reached for the sack hanging from his waist, revealing the wooden box inside. Simon, you're too courteous. While Derek smiled, there was a hint of caution in his eyes. He was confident that even if Simon was pulling out a grenade, he would be able to evade it in time. This was something I found in an estate ruin. I'm not sure what it's for, so I thought I'd give it to you, Captain Derek. Simon put on a clueless act, his lips curved in a relaxed smile. He opened the box and pulled out the rune puppet. If there were such psychic control curses in this world, there must be things that could resist psychic control. What he was really calculating was that in case the puppet didn't have the expected effect, he could come up with an excuse. Apparently, they were deceived by Simon's kind smile. Seeing him not doing anything dangerous, they let down their guard. Of course, no one would expect him to pull out such a peculiar thing. The moment the rune puppet was exposed to the air, a strange scene occurred. An invisible wave of psychic force rippled out instantly. Clearly, the puppet was more powerful than expected. Even Captain Derek, upon seeing the rune puppet, his eyes froze instantly. The other 5 men by the campfire looked as if they had lost their souls, their eyes vacant. This was the moment he was waiting for. Seeing this, a fierce light burst from Simon's eyes. Without hesitation, he pulled out his flame crossbow and aimed it at Derek's eye socket. Simon had noticed earlier that, as the only professional in the team, this guy had many mysterious abilities like Bald Ivan. So, even under control, Simon believed this guy must be killed first. With a pop, his head burst open like a smashed watermelon. Memory fragment of Derek Nelson acquired *2. You've gained some gear knowledge. You've acquired a memory sequence. The aberrations in the city are getting more frequent, it seems. Steam combat experience +4. Soul power +0.13. A cloud of soul smoke appeared on the corpse. With a wave of his hand, Simon swallowed it into his own soul. Before he had time to digest the obtained information, Simon raised his hand and shot another arrow at the sniper in the distant watchtower. An arrow hit the lower abdomen and a figure fell. These two snipers weren't under the control of the rune puppet, but they didn't expect Simon to strike so suddenly. Moreover, they didn't expect Simon to be able to control and instantly kill their team leader when faced with their 6-man team. After firing 2 arrows, Simon knew he didn't have a chance for a third one. The enemy sniper wasn't stupid. He leaped back decisively and hid behind a wall of earth and stone. Sure enough, the next second, with a pop, a burning arrow exploded a large chunk of the wall. The burning arrow penetrated the wall and almost hit Simon. Then, rapid gunfire followed, and the nearly 1-meter-thick wall was reduced to rubble in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the only remaining threat was the sniper in the watchtower. Simon knew his archery skills and terrain were not advantageous. If he tried to take a shot, the flaming crossbow would surely lose to the longbow. Without hesitation, he pulled out his crossbow that was loaded with special alchemical arrows and fired several shots at the watchtower. 2 alchemy arrows, burning, 2 alchemy arrows, high explosive, and 2 alchemy arrows, shocking. Although the large revolver was only loaded with 6 arrows, it was a devastating barrage for the enemy sniper. Simon didn't realize that this round of shooting consumed more arrows than many archers used in a year. The power of the special arrows was astonishing. After the arrows hit, the entire watchtower was bombed out. The explosion hundreds of meters away was loud, especially the last 2 shock arrows, which even made Simon, far away, feel a buzzing in his head. He didn't hesitate and charged out after shooting. Due to his enhanced vision, he saw the sniper in the thick smoke trying to get up, then he fired 2 more arrows. Pop! Pop! The body hit the ground. Memory fragment of Sinus Carter acquired *2. You've gained some basic alchemy knowledge, firearms experience +6, mental power +0.07. Simon didn't let his guard down. He found the other sniper who had been shot in the abdomen and shot him again. Then he returned to the campfire, looked at the 5 guys whose bodies twisted like marionettes, and shot them dead without any hesitation. He left the deputy leader, Lorne. From the moment he started to the end of the fight, the whole process didn't last more than a minute. An entire hunting squad was wiped out by Simon's decisive actions. However, there was a minor inconvenience. Peeling off too many memories at once is a bit overwhelming. After consecutively stripping memories from 3 corpses, Simon found his head a bit dizzy, like staying up all night. But he also found that if he didn't strip them in time, the gray fog on the corpses would gradually fade. The longer the interval, the lower the quality of the stripped memory. After about 5 minutes, the gray mist on the body would completely dissipate. At this moment, Simon roughly understood some of the limitations of the Death Harvester ability. After resting for a moment and fully digesting the memory fragments in his mind, Simon opened his eyes. Simon exhaled a long breath, feeling invigorated. With this harvester talent, I feel like I could become invincible in this world. The soul fragments of the 7 corpses brought him a lot of benefits, filling his mind with strange knowledge and understanding of this world. He felt he had visibly become stronger. Just a few minutes of digestion made him feel like he had acquired the knowledge and skills that would normally take a year or 2 to learn. Simon put the rune puppet back in its box. He glanced at Lorne, who he had trapped tightly, and murmured, "I didn't plan to communicate with you in this way." Unfortunately, they insisted on harboring malice. After putting away the puppet, Lorne woke up from his mental chaos. He seemed not to understand what had happened at first, but when he saw the bodies scattered all over the campsite and looked at Simon, he was instantly filled with terror. Simon didn't give him a chance to say another word. He stabbed him in the right leg and said coldly, "Now, I ask a question, you answer one." Turns out, the reason I wasn't shot dead by these guys was because they recognized the origin of this firearm, thought Simon, a sense of relief washing over him as death had narrowly missed him once again. After an hour-long interrogation, he put the last survivor of the Silverhand Wilderness Hunters out of his misery. He then realized that the reason the group hadn't attacked him previously was because of the rune musket, the well-known firearm, the Trigul, fastened at his waist. It was the signature gun of Ivan, the Ironhead of the Raven Brotherhood. The gun was capable of bearing the energy fluctuations of special alchemical bullets. Apparently, this bald guy named Ivan had quite the reputation in a city called Old Linden. He was a veteran assassin in the Raven Brotherhood, ruthless and vengeful, and very few dared to provoke him. The group, recognizing Simon was alone, had murderous and greedy intentions. However, they were unsure of his relationship with Ivan, hence they tested the waters first. Indeed, no wealth comes without a windfall. Simon was finally able to obtain resources. He added 10 more storage rings and had plenty of water and food. He had no idea about the basic prices in this world, but seeing the number of alchemical bullets on the 8 bodies, which were fewer than what Ivan had, he guessed that the price he paid wasn't small. But he definitely made a profit. He stripped the 2 most valuable things from the body of Derek, the silver mechanic. An eerie blood vessel and a bone. With Lorne's words, each of these 2 items could sell for at least 100,000 liso on the black market, and the average salary of a mechanic in this world was barely 3,000 liso a month. It was indeed a fortune that could make one rich overnight. Simon was grateful for his judgment, for immediately taking out Derek, the silver mechanic. In Lorne's words, all professionals were strong. Derek, a gunsmith, had replaced both his arms with firearms and cannons. If given a chance, he would definitely be a formidable opponent. Even if his brain was controlled, his mechanical arms would automatically activate the counterattack device, a capability that came with the implant, and mechanical devices were not subject to mind control. If Simon had hesitated even a little, the moment the counterattack device of the mechanical arm was activated, he would have been the one to die. Several days later, following the route on the map and barely surviving a few encounters with monsters, Simon finally reached the city known as Old Linden, safe and sound. This was the only known human settlement, an underground city. Quite a spectacle, indeed. Although Simon had heard about the high walls of Old Linden, he was still astonished when he saw the 100-meter concrete wall that resembled a dam. The city, comparable in size to a provincial capital, was completely enclosed by this wall. The scale of the project was an architectural marvel. The wall bore many terrifying marks, scratches from giant beasts, craters from meteor strikes, corrosive scars from spells. It was hard to imagine the intense battles that must have taken place, and what kind of existence had left these horrifying battle marks on the wall. Indeed, this city was also an ancient ruin. Long before these humans arrived, it had stood silently here for centuries. The Eye of Omniscience confirmed this. Simon looked at the high wall and a string of text appeared. City wall explanation, an ancient city wall that has been standing for over 1,400 years. Old Linden had 4 huge city gates, east, west, south, and north. If Simon hadn't known about Old Linden, he might have foolishly tried to enter through the main gate. That seemed like the only way to enter such a city. In that case, he would have been subjected to an inspection at the gate. Without a legal identity, he would have been singled out for scrutiny. In the worst-case scenario, his true identity would have been revealed and Simon would have faced assassination again. As for outside the wall, except for those who ventured out into the wilderness, no one chose to live outside the city for long. Because it wasn't possible. It was like being in a nuclear radiation area for a long time. Even if one didn't encounter monsters, the dense and wild dark spiritual power could cause people to mutate at a high rate. The most common monsters outside the city wall were mutated humans. But there was another way to enter the city, and that was gang smuggling. Simon learned a lot of useful intelligence from Lorne. Old Linden is divided into the inner city and the outer city. The inner city is where the rich and the elite gather, and the outer city is the commoners' area. Although it's said that the whole of Old Linden is managed by Duke Robert, who controls the Black Tower, and the Raphael family behind him, in fact, the control of most parts of the outer city is in the hands of the 3 major gangs. There are 3 major gangs in the outer city: the Steam Brotherhood in the Eastern District, the Iron Cross Society in the Southern District, and the Raven Gang in the Western District. They also represent the 3 mainstream branches of alchemy in this world: mechanical faction, fusion faction, and ancient magic faction. Alchemy's essence is equivalent material exchange. The ancient magic faction possess abilities like a magician, capable of casting various spells. They excel in potion brewing, enchantment, and mysticism. Although they can cast spells, they do not believe in any elemental gods, and the casting of spells is not driven by magical laws, but purely energy and elemental fusion, using alchemy laws to exchange equivalently to transform elemental forms, or to change elemental properties. For example, an alchemist standing on the ground can use alchemy to transform the form of the earth element, forming a earth spike. They can also consume more energy to exchange the earth element equivalently into the fire element, releasing a fireball. A mechanical faction, also known as the New Faction, uses alchemy more for the creation of mechanical equipment, firearms, mechs, steam devices, and mechanical rune implants. A mechanical limb that had puzzled Simon is a half-technological product based on alchemy, not purely technological. The fusion faction is a combination of the 2 factions, encompassing both mechanical engineers adept at mechanical modification and ancient magicians who study spells. All are welcome. Simon could not use the original host's identity, so he did not have a legal identity to enter the city. His only choice was to join one of the 3 major gangs and be smuggled in. The previously killed Bald Ivan was a big name in the Raven Gang, and the so-called Silver Mechanic Derek was of the Steam Brotherhood. Although no one knows that Simon was the one who killed these people, he thought it best to be careful. Especially since he had some spoils of war that needed to be disposed of, he didn't want to get into trouble for it. Just like when someone recognized Bald Ivan's famous gun, Three Ghosts gun, he almost got killed for its value. It seems like I can only join the Iron Cross Knights. Simon avoided the city gates and detoured to a section of the wall in the southern city district. Looking up, there was already a crude iron cage lift on the city wall to receive people into the city. Simon had no choice. To enter the city, this was the only way. Without much hesitation, he walked over. Joining the Thieves Guild has good benefits and plenty of extraordinary resources, but in actuality, most people in Old Linden would rather be workers for a lifetime than join the guild because the casualty rate of guild members is extremely high and their lifespan is short. They substitute for the city's security department, handling aberration incidents, violent conflicts, and wasteland hunting tasks in their jurisdiction. These areas involving combat have a very high casualty rate. This is somewhat like Simon, a mercenary who risked his life on the battlefield for money in his previous life, managing chaotic poverty. Stricken areas. This is also the most important reason why the inner city's Black Watchtower tacitly allows the existence of the three major thieves' guilds. Atop the castle walls stand a group of knights, some donning the air of warriors in chaotic times, some sporting black cloaks. A conspicuous Iron Cross symbol is emblazoned on their outfits, signifying their affiliation with the Iron Cross Knights. Every day, there are people who, for various reasons, wish to join the knights, from desperate fugitives and murderers looking for a quick path to wealth and extraordinary resources, to fighters willing to venture into the wilderness beyond the city. The captains of the knights enjoy recruiting new members from here. Hey, Carl, could you perhaps keep your blade magic device away? Showing off like this makes us Iron Cross Knights look like we're wizards who haven't seen the world. We're both captains, could you please be a bit more serious? Heh, Boss Smoker, I just successfully integrated my magic device, can't I be a little excited? The higher-ups of the Knight Corps have given you 3 blocks around Grant Street to manage. Be careful. There are a lot of casinos and bars there. It might be lucrative, but the old-timers in the Knight Corps avoid it. Do you know why you're the lucky one? Isn't it because the Steam Union guys have been causing trouble lately? No problem. If they dare to cross the line, I promise to shave their heads, as long as you're aware. Not only is the Steam Union causing trouble, but the strange incidents in the city have also been increasing lately. You'd better be more cautious. If you need help, just tell me. You can pick a few new recruits you like today first, thanks, Boss Smoker. I hope I can recruit a few good fighters today. The speaker is a middle-aged man with a hawkish gaze, casually reclining on a chair while puffing on a cigar. Standing next to him is a young man whose arms and legs are exuding a metallic gleam, much like that of a blade. Simon lifts his gaze to the two of them and, without much hesitation, steps into the crude iron cage and ascends the city wall. New here? Want to join our Iron Cross Knights? What's your name? Simon. What kind of magic have you awakened? Eagle Eye magic. Oh? So you're pretty good with firearms, huh? Decent. Good, stick with me then. You can call me Captain Carl. Alright. Joining the Knight Corps was an unbelievably simple process. After answering a few simple questions, Simon officially became a member of this Iron Brotherhood. As the information he had gleaned suggested, the Knight Corps did not care about one's background. After all, the majority of those who joined the Knights didn't have clean slates. As long as you were willing to lay down your life for the Knights, no one would question your past. In return for your loyalty, the Knight Corps could provide protection. No one would frisk you, no one would probe too much, no one would cause trouble. Simon let out a sigh of relief. His magic storage ring was safe. The precautions he had taken earlier proved to be unnecessary. It was a good start. Captain Carl appeared only a few years older than Simon, but he seemed to have been a veteran who had been in the Knight Corps for many years. Those who could survive for a long time in a gang were all capable. Carl was a bona fide magic professional, an agility class who had fused with a highly offensive magic device, the blade. Simon watched everything quietly, his eyes gleaming with anticipation and curiosity for this novel world. After waiting for most of the day, the day's recruitment finally came to an end. Apart from Simon, Carl had chosen 3 others. One had awakened giant strength magic, one stone skin magic, and another enhanced smell magic, all of which could enhance their fighting abilities to some degree. Let's go, Boss Smoker. I'll take the newbies for a tour around the district. Carl, along with Simon and a few others, greeted the middle-aged man whose hand was constantly emitting smoke, and descended from the castle wall. Simon remained silent throughout the entire process, following behind him, quietly playing the role of an invisible person. This young man named Carl was very talkative, and seemed quite pleased with his newly recruited subordinates. As he walked, he distributed a bag or two of gold coins to the group, explaining, "The benefits of the Thieves' Guild are 2,000 gold coins per month, and additional payments are given depending on the mission. Since we're a newly formed squad not required to go on adventures out of the city for the next 3 months, you can all enjoy your time." The newcomers easily received their first substantial reward in this manner. 2,000 gold coins is already equivalent to more than half of the annual salary of an ordinary craftsman in the city. Simon was slightly surprised, as he was not aware of this detail. But seeing the subtle excitement on the faces of the others, they didn't seem surprised. To be paid before the work, that would have been considered an excellent deal in his previous life. Is this really the Thieves' Guild? Simon thought about it carefully, then it became clear. In the Thieves' Guild, no member can guarantee their survival until the next month. To get paid first is to enjoy life first. If anything happens, at least they didn't die for nothing. Moreover, there are no restrictions after joining the guild, no confinement, no restrictions on freedom. Simon could take the money and run, but no one would do that. Being wanted by the official authorities but still able to join the guild was a way to survive. If wanted by the 3 major thieves' guild, there would be no place for him in the old Linden. The only way left would be death. So for most people, once they join the guild, they can only follow one path into the darkness. But for Simon, a high mortality rate? Well, he didn't care. Compared to facing death, a mundane world would make him feel more bored. His awakened Reaper talent wanted to become stronger, which meant he was destined to deal with death. To avoid risks and be an ordinary person? No, entering such a marvelous and exciting world and then being timorous, that would be truly boring. Simon looked at his slightly trembling pulse. He knew, he also enjoyed this world. Simon and several newcomers followed the team leader Carl down from the castle wall to enter the city. The city was filled with crowded slums everywhere, and from a distance, it was of war-torn style. Like a high wall, the stone buildings in the city were all ancient. The city seemed to have been invaded in a great war hundreds of years ago, with dilapidated buildings everywhere. Above the ruins, tall stone chimneys and iron slums were the new buildings. As for the inner city, it was at the end of the site. There was another high wall separating it, with bright lights. In the center of the inner city, there was a black tower of unknown height. The city was vast. They boarded a carriage and raced into the city. On the carriage, Simon kept his composure and observed everything in the city. As a transmigrator, he dared not speak recklessly, for fear of revealing his complete unfamiliarity with this city. Perhaps because Simon said that his awakened talent was Hawkeye, one of the most practical combat abilities in the D-level talents, the team leader Carl seemed to value him a lot. He particularly advised, "Your talent is quite suitable for popular sequence professions. I'll help you keep an eye out for relevant job change materials. Meditate more when you're free. Once your magic power is full, change your job. Let's try to have 2 magic professionals in our team." Simon responded, Carl didn't say much more, waved his big hand and said, "Let's go, I'll take you all to tour our team's patrol area. I'm not going to say much, but there will definitely be beautiful women." With that, all the men in the car revealed an understanding smile. Grant Street is located at the junction of East Winter District and South Carlson District, and is home to one of the 3 most famous pub districts in Old Linden. It's a lucrative spot, and thus often the site of conflicts between 2 factions, the Iron Cross Knights and the Steam Union. The pubs here are a mix of gamblers, hunters, and desperados. The order here is chaotic, with gunfights and brawls common occurrences, and unlucky victims lying in the streets nearly every day. Simon and his companions stopped at a place resembling an old blacksmith shop. They got out of the car, their boots landing on the sewage-filled ground. Simon took a curious look at this dark side of the city. Although this world is devoid of electricity, it was not short of various glowing magical products. Not far away, a myriad of magic lamps emitting ambiguous colors illuminated the streets. This was a gathering point for the factions, and a group of people in armored leather clothes, multicolored headscarves, and weapons akin to magic fire starters were hanging around the street. Simon felt that his knightly bald style blended in with these people instantly. "Hey, Captain Carl, you're back. Oh, these newbies look pretty good. Why didn't the captain bring back a female member?" Carl greeted these people, then briefly introduced Simon. "This is Simon, Gilbert, Sasha, Andre. From now on, we're all brothers." The gang members were not so formal, they shook hands, and that was that. The efficiency of the gang was such that on the first day of joining, they were put to work immediately. Carl led Simon, the 4 newcomers, and several old-timers, in total about a dozen people, to patrol the streets. Just like the gangs of yesteryears, they would do rounds of the areas under their control, showing their faces. "Our job from now on is to take a walk around 3 blocks near Grant Street every night. If there's work to do, do it, if not, go wherever you want. Carl was explaining the work content to Simon and the newcomers. Then, he handed out a magical device with a communication function, and added, keep this communicator with you at all times. In case of emergencies, I will summon everyone. Don't forget to come as soon as possible, otherwise, the gang rules are not merciful. He paused, then turned to a burly man carrying a shotgun and said, Samuel, you explain the rules to the newcomers, so they don't get into trouble for not knowing them. Samuel responded with a smile, sure. Simon understood the work content was simple, just like now, patrolling the streets. Gather at 7 in the evening, about half an hour of work time each day. Then the rest of the time, they were free to do as they pleased. Gambling, hanging out at the pub, as long as they stayed within the street, it seemed quite relaxed. Hey, Boss Clifford, business is booming. Milton boss, I heard you got a batch of good stuff recently, remember to save some pretty ones for me and the brothers tonight. The Iron Cross Knights controlled almost all the pubs on Grant Street. Carl and his gang were well known on this street, and the owners and girls of the night pubs greeted them warmly. Simon was also surprised that this seemingly decayed industrial city had such a lively side. The bustling of these entertainment venues was no less than the large pubs of his former world, with a constant flow of people. Groups of heavily made-up girls stood on the street soliciting customers, their revealing clothes, long white legs, and proud chests exposing a dizzying amount for all to see. The air on the street was filled with a thick, sensual scent. Long-eared girls, cat-eyed girls, cloaked girls, carriage-driving girls, maids, slave style, aristocratic ladies style. Simon hadn't expected the fashion trend of Old Lington to be so diverse. Virtually any outfit that could stimulate a man's hormones could be found here. The ladies boldly showcased their figures, not minding the wandering hands of men on their bodies. Instead, they would giggle charmingly at the slightest touch. Oh, Eileen, you seem to have gained some weight. No, I don't mean it in a bad way, your hips feel even better. Lisa, where have you been recently? Have you been fooling around with some man? Captain Carl, are you coming over tonight? Carl and a group of regulars seemed quite familiar with the city's scene, walking through the crowd and casually chatting. Not only were they well known, but they were also regular patrons here. The survival rule of Old Lington was brutal. Civilians who couldn't engage in combat were easily expendable. Here, with just a few hundred gold coins, one could enjoy a night with an attractive lady. Therefore, the 20,000 gold coins monthly salary of the knights could even keep one immersed in this gentle world until drained dry. Simon and a few newcomers felt more familiar with the place after this experience. Grant Avenue had 3 main streets filled with violence, lust, and illegal transactions. They patrolled one street filled purely with pleasure establishments, followed by a street full of inns. The magic lamp signs of various colors lit up a world of hedonism. This street was filled with inns that had a strong industrial style. As Simon was finding the patrol a bit boring, an incident occurred. Passing by a place called Elephant Inn, a middle-aged man with a big brown beard called out to Carl. Hey, Captain Carl, good timing. I have a little trouble in my shop and I need you to take a look. The inn owner led them to the back alley with a worried face, pointing to half a bloody body on the ground. I think it was last night, some poor drunkard fell asleep in the back alley. Now as you can see, half his body has been bitten off by some creature. This was the back alley of the inn, filled with empty wine bottles. Unlike the shiny front, this place was filled with grime, darkness, and stench. Simon's keen eyesight allowed him to clearly see the half-eaten body. The body had serrated bite marks, as though it had been gnawed on by a large creature. The corner of the street had a few dark sewer entrances, the murky, unpleasant smell wafting out from them. The inn owner seemed accustomed to this, continuing, Captain Carl, it seems like there's some creature in the sewer. Lately there have been many reports of homeless people disappearing, seemingly taken by some man-eating creature. It's causing a lot of unease. I'm worried if this continues, it'll affect our business. Oh, I see. Carl took a look, then kicked the body into a nearby trash can. The body would probably be picked clean by rats soon and no one would care who the dead person was. After cleaning his boots on the ground, Carl added, Don't worry, Charles. I'll send someone to investigate. With that, he left the Elephant Inn with Simon and the others without lingering. Walking down the street after leaving the inn, a newcomer asked, Captain, are we going to investigate this later? This was also Simon's question as he believed that this fell within their duty. To their surprise, Carl chuckled and responded, Investigate? The sewers of Old Lington are a 1,000-year-old antique. Their structure is 10 times more complex than the surface roads. No one can map out the underground. It's a haven for all sorts of creatures and mutants who would want to go to such a filthy place. He paused to look at the newcomers. As long as these creatures don't come to the surface, we don't need to worry. We have better things to do than investigate this, understood, Captain? It seemed that everyone was in agreement with this. Next was the tavern, followed by the gambling house. The group went around Grant Avenue, showing their faces to claim their territory. Soon, they reached a gambling house where underground fist fights were taking place. When Simon saw that magic smoke emerging from the body of a dead gladiator in the ring, his eyes lit up. Things were finally getting interesting. He knew that for a long time to come, he would have plenty to do. Simon never expected that the underground gambling den in Raven's district would also hold deathmatch gladiator fights. This is an extremely brutal combat sport, with no rounds, no points, and the match determines not only the winner but also life or death. Since it's a fight to the death, the gladiators go all out. They are highly entertaining to watch. However, the sheer uncertainty and the quickness of a lethal move make it nerve-wracking, intensifying the thrill of gambling. Therefore, this bloody gladiator fight is the most popular gambling event in the underground world. Simon followed the gang leader, Carl, into this fight gambling stall named Blood Fortress. Gangsters have their own reputation, and whether they are known or not, gamblers would unconsciously make way for them when they saw the Iron Eagle emblem on them. The air was filled with a sweet aroma, a type of hallucinogenic potion that could stimulate one's nerves. Alchemy is a basic skill for alchemists, and there are people in the black market who specialize in manufacturing these addictive potions. Skull Crusher, rip him apart. Oh, Death Messenger, get up, I've bet 10,000 gold coins on you, don't lose. Huh, Skull Crusher is going to win. Kill him, blast his head. Like an indoor basketball court, the basement was vast with a huge octagonal cage in the center. There, two blood-covered gladiators were fighting for their lives. The fight was rapid, and after a few rounds, the muscular gladiator known as Skull Crusher broke his opponent's neck. A wave of cheers erupted from the gambling den. Of course, there were also disgruntled losers among them. Simon, however, was focused on the gray mist floating above the corpse in the distance, his eyes narrowing. He had thought that after entering the city, he would have no opportunity to use his Reaper. But now, it seemed, joining a gang might not be such a bad idea. Carl noticed the difference in Simon's gaze, figuring that it was his first time seeing such a gladiator fight. He took the opportunity to introduce to the few newbies, this is the hottest betting style in our Ravens district. As he spoke, he pointed to the VIP boxes on the top level of the audience seats. See? Those boxes are occupied by big shots from the high tower city. They are truly wealthy individuals who could casually toss a small fortune. Simon listened and turned to look at the one-way glass boxes. Behind those black glasses, there seemed to be pairs of eyes, staring at everything happening in the arena. Hearing this, a new member asked, big shots from the high tower city would come to the fringe city? Don't those arrogant people despise our dirty and run-down city, refusing to set foot here? Hee, quite a few of them actually come here. Carl shrugged, seemingly not showing much respect towards the people of High Tower City. After all, High Tower City doesn't have such thrilling matches. If those guys want to have fun, they have to come to our turf. But it's because of these patrons that we can live so prosperously. As he spoke, he seemed to remember something and warned the newbies, although we and those big shots from High Tower City live in different worlds and most likely will not intersect, if you ever do encounter them, do not provoke them. It will cause trouble for the boss. Simon, along with the other newbies, nodded and said, understood, boss. Carl took everyone around the gambling den, allowing the newbies to familiarize themselves with the surroundings. Alright, today's task is completed. You guys can go do whatever you need to do, remember to bring your carrier pigeons. Got it, the boss is wise. Buzz off, stop brown-nosing. The moment Carl announced, time off, the old hands scattered off in excitement that he looked at the novices who still seemed a bit confused and added, it's your first day in the Knights Corps, you can go have some fun. All those pubs and brothels we just passed are under the protection of our Iron Cross Knights Corps. You get discounts if you're looking for female company. At this, all the faces of the novices lit up with eager smiles, except for Simon's. Seeing how Simon seemed more interested in the gladiator games, Carl specifically warned, you can have fun with anything else, but try to stay away from gambling, especially these gladiator games, they can easily get addictive. Spend your gold on enjoying the company of women instead, that's much better. Everyone responded, understood, Captain. As Carl spoke, he seemed to recall something and gave an example of a negative outcome that he pointed to the only old hand who hadn't left yet and said with a look of contempt, take Samuel here, he blew his entire salary in one night last month. Now he has to rely on his comrades in the Corps to feed him, how shameful is that? Samuel, who had just been singled out, responded weakly, I thought I was on a roll. I won several games and was up a few thousand. I didn't expect to lose one and I was so mad I doubled my bet. The mentality of a gambler is the same in every world. They never leave when they're ahead, they want to make it back when they lose, they double their bets when they lose again, and then they sink deeper and deeper. Simon listened and began to understand that Carl was worried he'd squander his gold in one day. Carl didn't listen to Samuel's defense. but waved his hand and said to Simon and the others, "All right, off you go." Everyone nodded in response, "Yes, Captain." As soon as Carl left, everyone felt as if they were no longer restrained. The three other novices had their minds set on those attractive women from earlier. Isn't the carefree life of wine, meat, and women what they joined the Knights Corps for? "Simon, aren't you going?" one of them asked. "No, I'm going to stick around here for a while." Simon didn't go with the others to the pleasure house. His attention was fixed on the ring. Logic told him that compared to women, strengthening his own power was the key to survival in this world. His awakened talent as a collector relied on growth. As long as he could stay alive long enough, he'd be able to get everything he wanted. In that instant, another gladiator match began. Two new fighters entered the bloody duel in the arena, their fists landing heavy blows on flesh. Simon made his way to the front of the crowd of gamblers, moving closer to the arena. To collect memory fragments, he needed to be close enough. The gamblers were furious when someone pushed their way in, but when they saw the Iron Cross insignia on Simon's clothes, they swallowed their anger. The Iron Cross Knights Corps held a large amount of deterrence to ordinary people. Simon didn't pay them any mind and squeezed his way to the entrance of the passageway on the left side of the arena. If he remembered correctly, this would be the passageway where the bodies of the defeated would be dragged away. There were thousands of people in the arena, causing quite a ruckus. No one paid any attention to where the body of a loser was dragged off to, but Simon was worried that someone might notice him collecting soul fragments, so he specifically chose this inconspicuous corner. Just then, a barmaid carrying a tray pushed her way through the crowd, with a beaming smile on her face. She approached Simon and asked softly, "Sir, would you like to place a bet? If you can't bet on this round, you can bet on the next one. Blind betting has extra odds too. I'll bet 1,000 on the red side." Anyone standing this close to the front would be mistaken for an avid gambler. Simon naturally took out a stack of gold coins and placed them on the tray. Simon was being pushed by the crowd, his entire body up against a woman, with her chest deforming due to the pressure. She didn't seem to mind, accepting the money, pulling out a ticket, and giving Simon a flirtatious look, saying, "I think the knight can guess it." I also think so." Simon smiled slightly. He didn't think his bald head was handsome enough to attract women. He had observed that these barmaids often flirted with customers, because if the customers won the bet, they would tip generously. Despite the occasional groping, they could earn more in one night than most of the customers. This job was much more profitable and easier than street performers. "Kill him! Kill him!" Near the arena, a group of customers holding tickets were shouting the name of the gladiator they had bet on. Simon wasn't particularly interested in gambling, but he was fully focused on this fight. It was his first time witnessing such a brutal gladiatorial fight, and it stirred something deep inside him. The gladiators in the arena gave him his first lesson in the art of the otherworldly gladiator. The sword's aura was whistling, the murderous intent was making people's scalp numb. Simon put himself in the shoes of the gladiators, feeling deeply inspired. No wonder the all-seeing eye rated my gladiatorial skills as advanced beginner. If I were in the arena against them, I'd probably be killed on sight. At this moment, Simon saw a huge gap. The attack moves of these gladiators in the arena were ruthless, sharp like bullets, like daggers, stabbing at vital points, followed immediately by fatal blows, without giving the opponent any chance to counterattack. Death by one strike. This kind of gladiator fight didn't involve flashy moves, everything was aimed to kill. This was completely different from the gladiator fights Simon had in mind. This world was gradually showing its cruel side to Simon, the traveler. I told you, Blue Knight would definitely win. After all, his height and arm span are quite advantageous. Not long after, amidst the cheers of the gamblers, another fighter was killed and the match ended. The gamblers were cheering for the victor, while the loser's body was dragged out of the iron cage fighting arena like a dead dog, leaving a glaring trail of blood on the ground. Simon watched the scene unfolding before him impassively. As the body passed in front of him, no one noticed that he had absorbed a gray mist. Acquired Ivan's memory fragment *2, you have obtained the information. I really don't want to be a slave and fight in this damn underground boxing match. You have mastered the skill ground technique, crosslock, fighting experience +2, mental power +0.05. Simon digested the newly acquired memory fragment, a flash of sharpness in his eyes, a hint of surprise in his heart. I actually directly comprehended a fighting skill. This was the first time that Soul Reaper stripped a complete skill. Does this mean that those complete alchemy and magic skills also have a chance to be stripped directly? For a moment, Simon felt a little taken aback by the sudden surprise. Though not every time useful skills can be stripped from the souls of the dead, fortunately, there are many corpses. In such death matches, there are 7 or 8 games in a night, which means more than 200 bodies in a month. What's more, the fighters are all experienced masters who are adept at combat skills, so there's a high chance of stripping combat skills, compared to killing a few enemies at the risk of his own life. This way of collecting memory fragments is much easier. Just stay by the arena, watch the matches, and there's almost no risk. If he can hold on for a few months, Simon believes his combat power will make a qualitative leap. Of course, the premise is that he can live long enough in a gang where the average life Expectancy is short. On his first day on the job, Simon suddenly took a liking to this gangster identity. After one match, there wasn't much rest before the next one started. Simon's attention was all on the bodies, so he didn't notice the betting girl in a short skirt walking towards him with a beaming smile. She handed over the tray and said with a seductive smile, "Hey, sir, congratulations on your correct guess. Do you need me to help you place a bet for the next match?" The highlight of the night is a real professional. A professional would participate in such a death match? Simon paused slightly. He wasn't too delighted about winning money, considering the ratio. He probably won a little over 1,000. What really surprised him was that professionals would actually participate in such deadly matches. In his view, those professionals with extraordinary magical powers could do much better things than earning this desperate money. Seeing Simon's apparent interest, the betting girl asked, "Sir, who do you fancy? Do you want me to help you place a bet?" As she spoke, she had already fully pressed her body against Simon's, rubbing against him like a little cat. Simon knew naturally that this wasn't a romantic encounter, but a subtle way of asking for a tip. He wasn't stingy, and took out 2 green banknotes of 100 gold coins and stuffed them into the girl's bra. This was a normal gambler's move. Giggles, "Thank you, boss." The girl felt a ticklish sensation in her chest, not at all feeling taken advantage of, but instead smiled even more seductively. Simon's hand didn't linger for long. He took out several more wads of cash and said, "I bet on the red side for the next few matches, 1,000 each." The boss has a good eye. I also think the red side has a higher chance of winning tonight. The girl filled out the betting slip, sent a flirtatious kiss, and left gracefully. The life and death fights of the Iron Cage fighting arena continued to be held in full swing, and Simon was also carefully observing each match. In addition to stripping soul fragments, he was also seriously learning the fighting skills of this world. Although these fighters were not fighters, their physical fitness was much higher than that of humans on Earth, and their fighting styles and tactics were vastly different from what Simon was familiar with. In order to conceal his purpose and actions of collecting, he acted like a regular gambler, cheering for the side he had bet on, excited when he won money, and lamenting when he lost. On the first day of joining the gang, the environment was quite relaxed. Intuition told him that there seemed to be a pair of eyes watching him from time to time. The identity of the original owner was suspicious, and he didn't want to attract too much attention. And in fact, it was true. While Simon and a few newcomers were spending their time in various entertainment venues, team leader Carl, who was playing cards with a few veterans, also received a report from his subordinates. "What are those new guys up to now?" "Simon has been gambling in the fighter arena." The other 3, Gilbert went to the pub, Sasha and Andre went to the royal bath. "Oh, I see." Carl responded a few words indifferently after listening, and then there was no more. Samuel, who was sitting across from him, was also an old member who had been with Carl for a long time. He asked curiously without any reservations, "Captain, why are you having the brothers keep an eye on those new guys?" Old Boss Smoker once said, "Normal people need to indulge in one of eating, drinking, whoring, gambling, or smoking. It's a fundamental human need. Those who don't show any desires are either ulterior motives, highly self-disciplined, or monsters. No matter which, they can't be friends." Carl continued to play with his cards, explaining nonchalantly, "I don't want some people with ulterior motives to infiltrate our team." Simon found that his luck seemed to be pretty good. He won more than he lost in the few matches he had bet on, and he even made a small profit of a few thousand gold coins. Finally, the last highlight of the night started. Before the beginning of the match, there was a rumbling sound of a lifting machine from the underground of the fighter arena. The net box of the Iron Cage fighting arena was dismantled and taken underground, and a huge transparent protective shield rose up. After this unusual movement, the gamblers on the scene were not surprised, but instead erupted in waves of exclamation. "Wow, there's going to be a good show tonight." Simon looked at the thick protective shield on the stage, feeling a bit familiar. Isn't this thing the bulletproof glass of the bank counter in his previous life? But it looks thicker. And the obese gambler next to him seemed to be a regular here. He muttered, "TSK TSK. It's been a long time since I've seen this protective shield arise. It seems that the fighters who came tonight are very strong." By this time, the first participant had already entered the arena. That was a muscular man who was led on stage by several iron chains, like a prisoner. Simon raised an eyebrow at the scene. "A dangerous character has arrived." As soon as this man appeared, the scene was instantly ignited. "How is that possible? How could it be him?" Someone in the crowd of gamblers recognized the man's identity and exclaimed, "The first-level fugitive, Scorpio Abel, this guy is a bona fide second-order fighter. In this fight, there's actually him." Others also began to whisper. It seemed that everyone didn't expect tonight's match to be of such a high standard. "I heard before that he committed a crime in the inner city and was caught by the Iron Shield organization. I didn't think it was true. This match is getting interesting. This guy has countless murders under his belt, and he's been rampant for many years without being caught. His abilities are not weak. Who would be a match for Shadow Scorpion Abel? Could it be another second-rank knight? Now that would be rare. Second-rank knights are top-tier warriors wherever they are. I can't believe they've brought them into the arena. Second rank. As Simon listened to the bettor's conversation, he also found it hard to believe. The Iron Shield Brotherhood was one of the 3 major gangs in Old Lington, a formidable large-scale supernatural organization. But second-rank knights were few and far between. Even Captain Carl, who controlled 3 city blocks, was just a novice first-rank knight. Who would have thought that tonight's duel would bring out 2 of them, with one of them doomed to die? Just how strong is a second-rank knight? Simon's curiosity was piqued, as he had no concept of a second-rank knight's combat power, whether it was Iron Helmet Ivan or Silver Arm Dirk he had killed before. Both were first-rank knights. But even they were incredibly strong in his eyes. If it hadn't been for a stroke of luck, 100 Simons might not have been able to take them down, and now there were 2 second-rank knights. Does that mean I could claim the soul of a second-rank knight? Simon's surprise turned into anticipation. The competition hadn't started yet, but he was already looking forward to what he would gain from the body, and following the cheer, the second competitor also took the stage. It was a burly man in armor, his face stern, with a scar over his left eye, and he looked like a piece of cold stone. This guy was meticulous, his hair slick and shiny. Even on the stage, he had an air of superiority. He seemed like a personal bodyguard of some high-ranking figure in the inner city. The host introduced his name, Blood Demon Gordon, a guy with seemingly no reputation in the outer city. However, the experienced bettors could always get some insider information. Upon hearing his nickname, some seemed to know his background. Could it be him? You know him? Not long ago, I heard that a personal bodyguard of a high-ranking figure in the inner city had an affair with his beautiful wife, and the scandal spread. Could this Blood Demon be that guy? It might be. Who would let a second-rank knight die in a duel? Probably sold to the gambling house, or maybe even personally sent by the cuckolded high-ranking figure. Man, the bodyguards chosen by the high-ranking figures in the inner city are tremendously strong. They say that they require at least a C-level talent, even possibly awakened rare B-level talent. Simon listened to the gossip, his thoughts stirring, but it looked like Shadow Scorpion Abel seemed stronger. Ding dong. The bell rang, and the competition began. However, the opening move immediately opened Simon's eyes. Using a sword to block an arrow? Holy crap, such an explosive start. Is this the power of the second-rank knight? Simon was stunned. Just a moment ago, he still felt strong, or rather, thought that he would be powerful in the future with his Grim Reaper talent. He was full of confidence. Until he saw the moves of these 2, he realized how ignorant his confidence was. This mountain-like pressure was a force he could not match in his current understanding that he could hardly imagine. No. He couldn't fathom any method to withstand the exploratory strike from the 2 of them just now. That he felt that if he were to face these 2, even with a named sword and a philosopher's stone in hand, he would probably be killed instantly. At this moment, Simon squinted at the 2 figures on the stage, a certain thought burning in his heart. So this is the power of a second-rank knight. I have to admit, I'm a bit eager to graduate. It seems like the red flag I'm rooting for is going to lose this one. In the duel between the Red Devil, Gordon, and the top-wanted criminal, Dark Scorpion Abel, Simon's initial instinct was that Abel was going to win. After all, they were both second-order knights, but Abel was a notorious criminal with strong combat abilities, while Gordon was just an obscure armored soldier. Even if he had superior talent, a well-fed hound nurtured in a greenhouse couldn't compare to a hungry wild dog hunting in the wild. But to Simon's surprise, this match completely overturned his perception. Normally, when the gladiators entered the arena, the referee would ring a bronze bell to signal the start of the match. But this time, it was different. Abel didn't even intend to follow the rules. The moment the armored soldiers released his restraints, he conjured 2 torches like magic, pulled the trigger, and fired 2 shots at Gordon. Abel clearly understood that only one person could walk out of this arena alive. His survival was more important than any damn rule. Because Simon was close enough to the arena, he even saw the cold mocking expression on Abel's face. Abel embodied the definition of sly. This was a no-holds-barred fight. The gladiators were allowed to use their weapons of choice, and using torches was not against the rules. Simon then understood why a protective shield was raised. But seeing a second-order knight resorting to a sneak attack, Simon's expression turned peculiar. This guy has no respect for martial arts. Is this all you got as a top-wanted criminal? The high and aloof image Simon had of the second-order knight instantly crumbled. However, he also felt that Abel's cunning nature was exactly what made him suitable for survival in this cruel world. A true villain who was genuine and not hypocritical. No wonder he could commit crimes repeatedly and still survive for so long. Everything happened so fast. In less than 1/10 of a second, Abel had already fired his shots. This situation seemed absolutely disadvantageous for Gordon. The shots were tricky and unavoidable. Even if they didn't hit a vital spot, Gordon would lose the initiative if injured. The spectators rooting for Red Devil Gordon were just about to curse Abel for his deceit, but then, the unexpected happened. As the sparks erupted from the mouth of the torch, the spectators hadn't even had time to express their shock when they saw a flash in front of Gordon, followed by 2 sparks. The sounds of 2 gunshots and metal clashing almost simultaneously echoed in everyone's ears. There was a brief silence. All the spectators were dumbfounded. Even Simon, watching the 2 people in the arena, was stunned. It wasn't until a moment later that his thoughts returned to normal. Simon finally realized what had happened when he saw the short sword that had suddenly appeared in Gordon's hand. Did he block the torch with his sword? Holy crap, the surrounding area was filled with the sound of people swallowing hard. No one had expected Gordon to block the 2 sneak attack torches with his sword. He stood emotionlessly in place, as cool and composed as a block of ice. The next moment, the entire arena erupted in applause and cheers like a tsunami. Red Devil! Red Devil! Red Devil! The spectators' excitement instantly reached a climax. This high-profile fight had just started, but had already provided a visual feast, stimulating everyone's nerves. The battle between the 2 second-order knights was an eye-opener for everyone. Wow, so powerful! Simon's eyes narrowed as he focused intently on the arena, unwilling to miss any detail. At the same time, the face of Abel, also known as the Shadow Scorpion, showed a slight change. Only a strong opponent could truly appreciate one's strength. Abel hadn't underestimated his opponent and had predicted that the 2 torches might not hurt him, but he hadn't expected the opponent to resolve it so easily. Then, with a flash in his eyes, he made his move again. With a flick of his cloak, Abel suddenly hurled a string of sharp darts. The darts were deflected by Gordon's short sword amidst a shower of sparks. But clearly, Abel hadn't expected the darts to hurt his opponent. In the flash of sparks, he appeared behind Gordon like a ghost, slashing at his neck with a dark dagger. His speed was so fast that it was almost unbelievable. Seeing this, the spectators below the arena became excited. So fast! Is that the speed of the Shadow Scorpion Abel? A true assassin indeed. They say he has the talent C009 teleportation, which gives him the ability to burst forward in a short distance. Within 20 meters, opponents don't even have a chance to light a torch. An A-level fugitive is truly as impressive as his reputation. As Simon listened to these astonished comments, the 2 fighters in the arena had already clashed several times. Abel's speed was ghostly fast, his shadow seemed to be everywhere in the arena. If Simon's eyesight hadn't improved several times, he wouldn't have been able to see the 13 sword clashes and 2 elbow blocks. But clearly, Gordon was stronger. Despite the flurry of attacks, he calmly swung his short sword, blocking each attack accurately. Observing carefully, Simon noticed that Gordon hadn't moved at all. He stood in place, swinging his sword, and his armor remained undisturbed. Are all the bodyguards of the inner city's bigwigs so strong? Simon found it hard to believe. Abel's ghostly movements should have made him unbeatable. His mastery of the torch technique and swordsmanship was top-notch in Simon's eyes. But, he hadn't hurt Gordon. Simon never thought a bodyguard could be so strong. But what was even more surprising was yet to come. The fight between the 2 second-tier professionals on the arena was intense. Most of the spectators were ordinary people who simply enjoyed the show. Some wondered why Gordon didn't fight back. He wants to fight back, but he has to keep up with Abel's speed. It's good enough to be able to block the attacks. Hee, you guys just don't understand. That's the smart way to deal with it. Abel has the talent of teleportation, it's nearly impossible to catch him. But that talent drains a lot of energy, and he can't keep up the attack frequency. The best response is to stay still and counter the changes. Gordon is not only not stupid but clever. Just wait, Abel will panic soon. The spectators were mostly ordinary people who only cared about their own enjoyment. Only a few could understand the rhythm and skill of the combat on the arena. However, silently, many experts had gathered in the Red Hawk Fortress's casino, including Captain Calvin and the old soldiers of the Cross Knights, who had come to watch this exciting duel of the second-tier knights. The nobles in the inner castle were watching the bloody duel with great interest from behind the one-way glass in the boxes on the second floor. They were the real protagonists behind the game, and the heavy bets on the 2 gladiators were the main reason for the game. Next to the ring, Simon muttered, "The probing is over, are they going to get serious now?" He knew the excitement was just beginning. After all, they were 2 alchemists.